Do French people really smoke cigarettes instead of having lunch? Do they have croissants every single morning? Is it true that they never clean their pans? So a lot of you seemed to enjoy my video on why French women don't get fat, which I'm gonna put right here if you haven't seen it. So I thought that I would stay in theme with this French thing and review the food clichés in Emily in Paris, which is certainly a series you've heard about. It's on Netflix and everybody is talking about it and saying how cliche it is or loving it. But I'm just going to be reviewing the food clichés in this series today and give my personal opinion as a French nutritionist who lives in Paris. So let's start right away with the first cliché, that is that French people have croissant or viennoiseries more generally. So it can be a croissant, a pain au chocolat, a pain au raisin, and that they have that every morning for breakfast. And that, I would say, is mostly false, but partly true. Mostly false because nobody has that for breakfast all the time. We're more likely to have toast with like butter or like bread and butter and jam or cereal. But we do have these viennoiseries once in a while. For instance, my family always has them during the weekends. We always have viennoiseries. And if you're going to a meeting at work, or if you want to bring something nice for your coworkers, then it's pretty often going to be these viennoiseries, so these croissants or pain au chocolat. But it's not something that we have for every single breakfast. I mean, good thing, because it's not the healthiest thing in the world. And to stay on the topic of breakfast, it's not true that French people meet up for breakfast. They don't do that. Nobody meets up for breakfast. The best I've done is meet up for brunch, but that was on the weekend. So we certainly don't meet up before our workday for breakfast. A second cliche in Emily in Paris is that French people smoke all the time. And more generally, they smoke instead of eating. Like they have a cigarette instead of having lunch.
We're gonna have lunch. No, I'll have a cigarette. Stop eating. Why are you eating? I'm sorry, it's just so good and I'm so hungry. Well, have a cigarette.
And I personally don't find this to be true. I know that for some people, they find that there are a lot of smokers in France and in Paris especially, and that is true, but I've never ever heard someone say like, oh, I don't need to have lunch, I'm just gonna have a cigarette. Like, nobody says that. Nobody. There are tons of rules regulating where you can smoke and where you can't smoke. You definitely can't smoke inside your workplace like they do in the series. There are certain times and places where people smoke, but it's really not as bad as they make it seem. And definitely people don't smoke in replacement of a meal. The third cliche is the fact that they always have super long lunch breaks.
Well, our lunches are pretty extensive here. I mean, I could spend 3 hours with you in the Louvre in the afternoon and no one would miss me. I'm going out to lunch. A long lunch with one.
It's 11 a.m.
Well,
and that is true. For most people, I would say that that is absolutely true. And it's, again, something that I mentioned in my Why French Women Don't Get Fat video. French people have really long lunch breaks. And I think that is actually a good thing because you're taking more time to eat and you're able to have nice, long, healthy and balanced meals, and you're not just like shoving down your food. When you're in school, you have lunch breaks that are generally 2 hours long. As you get older, they can become like 1 hour and a half. 1 hour is really the minimum that I've ever had. And then when you work, you can really typically have from 1 hour to 2 hours to eat. And it can even be more than that when you're having like a business dinner and you're meeting up and talking about work. It can really be dragged along. And French people always have a full meal. They often have like an entry, like an entry dish, and then they have the main course, then dessert. They can even throw in some cheese in there. It's really this long process, and it's really a great break for the day. Now, I know that not everybody does this. I know people who have lunch in 10 minutes in front of their computer, obviously, but the majority, they have really long lunch breaks. Number 4 is the wine. The wine is always flowing in this series. Like every single scene, she is having a glass of wine. And I would say that this is more false than true. Like, don't get me wrong, French people love their wine, but they often have like a glass or two with dinner, and often it's for a special occasion, like if they're having friends over or something like that. It's not really on a daily basis for most people, but definitely it's not the only drink we have. I feel like in this series people are drinking wine all the time, when in reality it's not like that. Definitely nobody has wine for breakfast. I mean, hopefully not.
I can't believe I'm drinking before noon. It's okay, this is downstairs, the breakfast wine.
The only drink you see at their table literally is always wine, and that's not always the case, but French people still love their wine. So again, number 5 is the little markets that you see, that people shop at these markets. And I would say that this is true in general. French people, again, like I talk about in my other video, they use fresh produce, so they need to be going out and getting more fresh fruit and vegetables pretty often. There are people like in America who just have more processed foods, so they don't need to be grocery shopping really often. So it's really frequent for people to get their fruit and vegetables at the market. And it's also not uncommon to just go to the market and just buy like only a few little things that you need, or even buy your meal for the day. I've done that in my previous workplace. There was a market every Wednesday morning, and I would buy the meal that I was gonna have. Like, I would go to the market, buy my food, and then eat it. So it's pretty common to shop at the market instead of grocery stores. Another cliche is the fact that they do not clean their cooking pans.
No. That ruins the pan itself. See, that's the secret to Rome. It's whenever things season.
And that is false. I mean, hopefully. Okay, one thing that is true is that you're not supposed to scrub your pans with like the hard like green side of the sponge. I don't even know what that thing is called, but that's just because it can damage the pan. It's not because people want to leave in all of the older food that you have in there in order to give it more taste. I mean, we don't do that in my family. Hopefully people don't do that in other families, but no, French people, we are clean. We clean our eating utensils, and don't worry, you can come have dinner at our house and you will be getting clean things. Number 7, the fact that they like their meat rare, and so like uncooked.
This steak isn't cooked at all. Well, correct for him, but not correct for me.
I would say that this is true. French people hate overcooked meat. I mean, I don't eat meat, so I'm like not the best person to talk about this, but the people I know around me, they prefer it when it is rare. We even have this thing called tartare, which is like just plain uncooked meat that's like seasoned, that's just not cooked at all. So it is really definitely something that people enjoy, and they hate it when the meat is too cooked. So number 8 is the fact that the customer is not king in France, and that is absolutely true.
The customer is always right. No, here the customer is never right. Well, maybe I'll educate the chef a little bit about customer service.
I've seen a huge difference between in America, where you can literally tell the waiter anything and they will do it for you like right then and there. It's kind of expected. Whereas in France, like they would bring me the wrong meal and I wouldn't say it because I would be too nervous. Like I didn't want to upset them. There isn't the same dynamic at all. Now, French waiters are obviously really nice and can be really accommodating. I'm the first one to always like remove the meat out of everything when I don't have another option, and they're always very nice about it. But it's really not this mentality where the customer is paying and so they are supposed to cater to their every needs like it is in the US. But then again, we don't tip people. I mean, we tip them a tiny little bit, but it's not even like you don't even have to tip people. So maybe that plays a role in that. I don't know. Number 9 is kind of a general thing about French rules at the table. The scene that made me think of this is when Emily isn't like supposed to serve herself her own wine at the dinner table, and that women shouldn't touch bottles at the dinner table.
I'm gonna have more champagne. I can pour it. Hi.
Women are not supposed to touch the bottle at the dinner table.
I would say that for the part of having rules, that is absolutely true. There are so many food rules, etiquette that we have to respect. The wine thing, I would say, is partially true. Things are starting to change, but it is kind of a common knowledge that it's going to be the man who is going to be serving, like pouring the wine. I don't necessarily agree with it. I think it's like stupid, but kind of common knowledge. And then as for the rest of the rules, there are definitely food rules. Like I remember when I was little, my dad would tell us like, you can't put your elbows on the table, you have to sit up straight, you're supposed to bring your food to you, like never bend down to eat your food. I would say that in France, people really are more dainty when they eat and they are more mindful of these kinds of things. Whereas in America, there's just not really this thing where you have to eat properly, I would say. I mean, these rules and this way of eating is definitely more pronounced in France than in the US. And number 10, I kind of did a little mashup for the fact that French people think that their food is better than American food.
Funny how every culture has a pancake.
Well, you can't compare our crepes to your pancakes. I mean, no contest, we win.
And more generally, that American food is disgusting.
And I eat the deep dish pizza.
That is our specialty. We take a lot of pride.
And it was a thing of this. How do you say?
Disgusting.
Like a quiche made of cement.
So for the deep dish pizza thing, for instance, this really hurt my feelings because I lived in Chicago and I adore deep dish pizza. It's my favorite pizza, but it is true that French people generally don't like it. They like it when the crust is super thin. And then for French people thinking that their crepes are the best ones, and more generally that French food is better than American food, I would say that this is true. French people are pretty proud of their food, their cuisine, and American food is not something they particularly enjoy. I mean, the way I see it, if they want to have American food, it's because they want to have like a junk food night or like a cheat meal or, you know, something kind of like comfort food. That's when they enjoy American food, but they would not like to go to a fancy dinner of American food. They don't see it as something fancy or classy or that you would like bring your date to. But as a French person who lived in America, I love American food. Obviously I wouldn't have it all the time, but I think it's really hearty and delicious, and thank you for your food. So that was the last food cliche in Emily in Paris. I tried to find anything that more or less related to food. Sometimes it was a bit out there and I was kind of pushing it, but I still hope you enjoy the video. And if you have any other video suggestions on this topic, we're going to be starting a little series on my whole point of view as a French nutritionist on either French food or American food and stuff like that. I've already had someone request a video for French meal plans and typical French breakfast, lunch, and dinner, so I'm going to be making those videos soon. But if you have any other video ideas that you want to see, don't hesitate to leave them in the comments. Please keep in mind that this is my opinion only. Obviously, I'm talking about what I do as a French person, what my family does, what my friends do, and what most people I know do, but there are obviously exceptions and French people who may not think like me at all. I mean, this goes without saying, I feel like. That's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like it and subscribe. Bye!